Now we're going to set up our streets. Click on the layers and make sure that the layer you're working on, which is above the background color, is assisted. So it says that down there below where it has a layer. So click on it. And if it's not, you should have a check mark down by drawing assist. Now click on where it says layer. Oops. And then we're going to click on rename. And it's important to name your layers so that you know what you're doing. And when I help you, I know what you're doing. And we can call this street and sidewalk. Okay. Now go ahead and get out of that. I'm going to make this smaller so I can see what I'm doing. You double check, make sure that you have black for your color. Make sure that you are using the monoline brush. Make sure that your size of your brush is at 3% and your opacity is up to 100%. Now we're going to start putting some lines down, and yours don't have to look exactly like mine, but it might make your life a little bit easier. We can go ahead and start by placing a line and seeing how that looks. I'm going to try to get as close to my examples that I did earlier as possible. So let me 2-finger tap that. Actually, we can go in a little bit closer. And I had one about there and one about there. No, let's move that. Let's go too far, down a little bit. Okay, that looks about right. And then 2 more lines going back this way. And try to make sure they're about the same width down here at the very bottom. And then how wide do you want your street to be? So what we just drew were sidewalks, and this is going to determine how wide the street is. That's a really wide street, so I'm going to come down a little bit more. Still a little bit too wide. And that looks about good. And then I'm going to make sure that the width of my sidewalk is similar to the other ones down in the front. And then how wide is the other street going to be that's going back into space? That looks about right. And then draw the other sidewalk, making sure that the width of that sidewalk relates. So that was a little bit too big. And I'm looking down towards the front, like down here, and I'm seeing if that width is similar. It's too wide still. Okay, so that's about right. Then what we're going to do is use the eraser tool. So the eraser, we want that to be monoline as well. So go through, find that brush, click on it. This time we want stabilization to be nothing because it's very frustrating when they're trying to control your line when you want to just erase something. So stabilization down to nothing and streamline down to nothing. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. When it comes to the eraser, we don't want to be controlled when it comes to that. When erasing, I'm going to zoom all the way in, and I am going to make my brush a little bit bigger so it doesn't frustrate me. And I'm going to just very carefully erase, and quality matters on your project. So I am going to very carefully erase all the way up to this point. That line to the right of where I'm erasing, I want to keep that because that's going to be our sidewalk tile. So I'm just erasing these lines, and I know you're probably thinking, well, can't we just leave these for the crosswalk? But it doesn't really work that way. So go through and erase. If you need to go smaller with your eraser, you can. You can zoom in really big. Oops. Go really small. A little bit more. We're going to also erase this one. Just gonna do the edges first. Then go back in with a bigger eraser. Too much. Next step, we're going to add the height of our sidewalk. So we'll make sure that we're on the right layer. Back to my brush tool. And I am going to put a tiny little line for the height of that sidewalk there. And a tiny little line for the height of the sidewalk there. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that the intersections are really nice. Maybe a little bit wider. Oops, you can do that again. So you're gonna have to keep reshooting your lines until they look good. Now from the height of the sidewalk, so I'm gonna zoom out so I can see the whole length of the line I'm gonna draw. We're gonna draw a line back, going that direction. Oops, again, I want to zoom in, but I want to make sure I can see the left side of my canvas edge. Draw that all the way out. And the last height of the sidewalk. Oops. Oops. Then you're going to take that first sidewalk tile and you're going to look at the width of it, and then you're going to draw the rest of the sidewalk tiles very carefully, and they are actually going to get a little smaller every single time we go back. So the width gets a little bit skinnier, so not that skinny. So we don't want to go too drastic, just incrementally. Maybe that one's a little bit too skinny.